A respected senator, humiliated and arrested over a parking violation that never happened. A biased officer, unaware of the storm their actions would unleash. What followed shattered reputations, ignited a community, and changed lives forever. But let's start at the beginning. On a warm spring evening in a bustling downtown, Officer Belinda Hart, a white police officer with piercing blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, patrolled her usual route. She prided herself on maintaining order in her community, though her approach often leaned towards strict enforcement rather than understanding. As she approached her patrol car, Belinda noticed a well-dressed black woman standing near a sleek, dark sedan parked slightly askew in a loading zone. The woman was speaking on her phone, gesturing animatedly. To Belinda, it looked suspicious. Too polished, too confident, and too out of place for this part of town. "Excuse me, ma'am," Belinda called out, her hand instinctively resting on her utility belt. "Is this your car?" The woman, surprised by the interruption, ended her call and turned to face Belinda with a calm, composed expression. She was tall and elegant, with neatly styled hair and a sharp navy suit that suggested authority. "Yes, officer, it is," the woman replied evenly. "I just parked here temporarily while finishing a work call. I'll move in a moment." Belinda's eyes narrowed. "This is a loading zone, and you're obstructing traffic. I need to see your license and registration." The woman raised an eyebrow but complied, retrieving her documents from the car with deliberate movements. "Here you go," she said, handing them over. "I apologize for the inconvenience." Belinda scrutinized the documents, her skepticism growing. The name on the ID read Marissa Caldwell, and the address listed was a prestigious neighborhood. Despite everything appearing in order, Belinda couldn't shake her bias-fueled suspicion. "This car has been reported in connection with a theft," Belinda said sharply, though no such report existed. "Step away from the vehicle, please." Marissa frowned. "I assure you that's a mistake. If you check the system, you'll see—" "Ma'am, step back now," Belinda ordered, her tone turning icy. As a small crowd began to gather, sensing tension, Marissa's patience wore thin. "Officer Hart," she said, reading the badge, "I recommend you double-check your information before escalating this further. I said back up!" Belinda interrupted, grabbing Marissa's wrist and pulling her toward the patrol car. In the chaos, the phone Marissa had been holding clattered to the pavement, its screen lighting up with an incoming call. The name displayed, Governor's Office. The fluorescent lights in the precinct flickered faintly, casting a harsh glare over the rows of desks, cluttered with paperwork and half-empty coffee cups. Officer Belinda Hart sat at her station, her fingers moving mechanically over the keyboard as she filled out the arrest report. The sound of her typing echoed in the otherwise quiet room, a monotonous rhythm broken only by the occasional ringing of phones in the distance. Across the room, the holding cells loomed, their bars cold and unyielding under the fluorescent glow. Inside one of them sat Marissa Caldwell, the very picture of composure. Her navy suit remained pristine despite the indignity of her surroundings, and her posture, upright and steady, exuded calm authority. Her dark eyes scanned her surroundings, missing nothing, as if she were observing rather than experiencing her confinement. Belinda tried to ignore the tension brewing within her as she typed, her jaw tightening with every word. She replayed the encounter in her mind, her instincts warning her that something about the situation felt off, though she couldn't put her finger on it. Her musings were interrupted by the soft sound of hurried footsteps. Officer David Martinez approached, his face pale and his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by an urgent, almost panicked expression. He clutched a tablet tightly in his hand, his knuckles white against the sleek black casing. "Belinda," he hissed, his voice barely above a whisper as he leaned closer to her desk. The tension in his tone made her look up immediately. "What is it, Martinez?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. David glanced nervously toward the holding cell, then back at Belinda. His eyes darted around the room, ensuring no one else was within earshot. With a trembling hand, he held up the tablet, its screen glowing with the stark headline of a news article. Do you know who that woman is? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Belinda frowned, her irritation flaring. What are you talking about? She reached for the tablet, her brow furrowing as she read the bold text on the screen. State Senator Marissa Caldwell advocates for criminal justice reform. Below the headline was a photo of Marissa, smiling confidently at a podium. Belinda's stomach twisted violently as recognition dawned. Her mouth went dry, and she felt a sudden, sinking weight settle in her chest. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered, her voice barely audible. David's voice dropped even lower. She's one of the most prominent voices in the state, he explained urgently. She's been in the news for months, pushing legislation for police reform. And you? He paused as if reluctant to say the words out loud. You just arrested her over a parking violation. The words hit Belinda like a punch to the gut. Her fingers, still hovering over the keyboard, froze in place. She felt a cold sweat break out on the back of her neck as she replayed the arrest in her mind, the firm grip on Marissa's wrist, the curt commands, the dismissive tone. The weight of the implications pressed down on her like a vice. This could blow up fast, David added, his voice grim. You know how this looks, right? A white officer arresting a black state senator? The media's going to eat this alive. Belinda swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. Does the chief know? She asked, her voice unsteady. She turned her head slightly toward the captain's office, her heart pounding at the thought of what would happen when he found out. David shook his head. Not yet, but he will soon, he said. And when he does... Belinda didn't let him finish. She knew exactly what he meant. The gravity of her actions, combined with the charged social and political climate, made it clear. She had just walked into a storm, one she might not survive intact. The precinct was in chaos, swarmed by news vans and angry onlookers. Reporters shouted questions as cameras captured every moment, their lenses trained on the building's entrance. Inside, Belinda sat stiffly at her desk, attempting to justify her actions. Her explanations of following procedure fell flat under the scrutiny of pointed questions. Online, the footage of the arrest told a damning story. Belinda's harsh tone and unnecessary force stood in sharp contrast to Marissa's calm composure. The video went viral, sparking outrage. Meanwhile, Marissa addressed the media with grace. This isn't about me, she said, standing on the courthouse steps. It's about everyone who faces this treatment without a platform. We need systemic reform, not retribution. Behind closed doors, Marissa met with Chief Alan Gregory. The small office felt heavy with tension. This isn't just about Officer Hart, Marissa said firmly. It's about a culture that enables this behavior. Without immediate reform, training, accountability, oversight, I will escalate this to the state level. The chief sighed. These changes take time. Then start today, Marissa replied sharply. Lead, or I'll make sure someone else does. As Marissa left the office, she passed Belinda in the hallway. Their eyes met briefly. Belinda's full of guilt, Marissa's unreadable, before Marissa strode away, leaving Belinda to face the fallout. Marissa surprised everyone by inviting Belinda to a one-on-one meeting. I want to hear your perspective, she said, extending what felt like both an olive branch and a challenge. During their conversation, Belinda was uncharacteristically candid. She admitted to biases she hadn't fully acknowledged before and spoke about the immense pressure to maintain control in unpredictable situations. Her words were tinged with guilt but also frustration as she struggled to reconcile her actions with her intentions. Marissa listened without judgment, allowing Belinda to express herself fully before responding. When Marissa shared her own experiences, she didn't hold back. She described the subtle and overt prejudices she had faced and the constant fight to balance dignity with advocacy. Her perspective was both personal and systemic, painting a vivid picture of the stakes involved in every encounter like theirs. The conversation, though tense at times, became a moment of mutual reflection. By the end of the meeting, an unexpected resolution emerged. Belinda volunteered to join Marissa in hosting community forums to foster open dialogue between law enforcement and residents. It was a bold step for someone still grappling with her own biases, but Belinda recognized the importance of taking responsibility. Hesitant at first, she soon found the process transformative, uncovering the depth of her assumptions and the power of collaboration. As the year progressed, the forums became a cornerstone of the community's efforts toward reform. Relationships between officers and residents began to shift, built on understanding rather than fear. For Belinda, the incident remained a mark on her record, but also became the starting point of her journey toward self-awareness and meaningful change.